right, good day and welcome to Hello Malaysia. I am your host, Surati Sanusi, and today I'm very fortunate that I have Tan Sri Hasmi Agam, the chairman from the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, or also known as Suhakam, to be with us. And we would also like to talk about human rights in conjunction with Human Rights Day. First of all, I would like to welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much.
Right, how are you today, sir?
Alhamdulillah, I am quite okay at my age. Shouldn't complain.
Right, and it obviously, I mean, we were talking, and it was your first time here ever in BERNAMA TV.
We have visited BERNAMA some years ago.
Okay.
To get to know all of that, but I think it's the first time
Being interviewed.
Yeah, being interviewed.
Right.
Although I was told that if I was keen, I could come for your hot seat thing, you know.
Right.
But it's in bahasa. My bahasa a bit karat sikit lah as a diplomat.
Okay.
So I think my other commissioner came in.
Right. And before, because you mentioned that you were a diplomat before, so before we start talking about human rights, let's hear something about yourself.
Is that
maybe
important?
Yeah, it is important. People would like to know who you are and where you came from before you became the chairman of Suhakam. Maybe a little bit on yourself.
Okay, I was a former diplomat. If I total up the number of years I spent in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, both as diplomat serving abroad at headquarters and also as a trainer rather, in Intan, and then the IDFR, a total of 42 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and also was Ambassador Large for Non-Aligned Movement.
Okay.
We were chair of the NAM.
Right.
So that was still under Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 42 years. Now, I'm still not quite retired.
Okay.
You know, I'm now no longer a civil servant, I can say. Although some people think that Suhakam is a government agency, which I will go into afterwards.
Right.
So I've not really retired. So I'm now 71. So, well, so I...
As a diplomat, I mean, where have you served?
I was posted, initial step when I was young, to Saigon. You wouldn't know where Saigon was.
Oh, yeah. We don't use the word Saigon. Right.
Before it became Saigon. A short stint. I went there to cover for another officer who left, Submarine Chief. He was a diplomat before, you know. He went for training. I went there for a short while. Came back, many postings, and then I was also sent to Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, to set up the embassy after the war.
Okay.
I was not quite keen to go to
the war-prone country.
After Saigon to Hanoi. But and because I was in Saigon, I thought the North would not accept me to be the first chargé to set up the embassy there. But they had no problems. I ended up in Hanoi.
Okay.
Tough life after the war. Couldn't bring my wife. I just got married then. And I had to stay in a small room in a hotel for 15 months, or rather 18 months.
Okay.
That felt like 18 years.
Right.
And I had a chart on my wall.
When are you going home?
I took the day off. I suppose prisoners do that.
Wow. Okay, but you were in a hotel, so
yeah.
really...
Then I think they compensated me with London.
Okay. Oh, that's a better place to go. So London, besides London,
I was in Washington D.C. No, before Hanoi, I was in Washington D.C. After Saigon, you know. Married to my wife there.
Okay.
A former diplomat, fellow diplomat.
Okay.
But my first ambassadorship was in Libya, where after 3 days we were bombed.
Wow.
In '86.
Okay, but because you went through the war, so you went to another one.
Yeah, 86. But except for these three hardship posts, Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and Libya, my friends in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs envied me for being posted to the so-called, they call it Dunhill posting.
Okay.
I was in London, I was in Washington D.C., I was in New York twice.
Wow.
I was ambassador to Paris.
Okay.
So.
But Libya should balance that out.
Yeah. So I had a mixture of both hardship and not so hard postings.
Right. From there, from being a diplomat, now being the chairman. When were you the chairman of Suhakam? When were you elected as a chairman?
Well, you raised my topic by being my membership of Suhakam. Actually, when I was about to reach my what they call mandatory retirement age, in those days 55, in New York, I was offered a commissionership of Suhakam, which I accepted. Because in New York, we also dealt with human rights issues, you know?
Yeah.
So I accepted it, but unfortunately, they told me to stay on in New York because we were then going to the Security Council.
Okay.
After Tan Sri left. I had served in the council before 1890, when we were a member. And then I think one of the reasons they brought me back was that we were going back again. And also at that time, Tan Sri was elected as President of the General Assembly. and they wanted somebody, his old colleague, to take care of the mission, the embassy. So I came back, and I was quite reluctant to go there as a second time, you know.
Right.
Although I was the Orient ambassador.
Okay, why?
Well, they wanted somebody with expertise. Unfortunately, in those days, not many people have expertise on multilateral diplomacy. When I went to New York the first time, 89, 90, I had no background about multilateral diplomacy.
I see.
Mostly bilateral, you know.
Right.
So I went there. So Rizali wanted, you know, somebody with, you know, experience. And then when he left, I took over. He went to the council. So I served in New York twice, and I retired. But so at the time, I accepted the offer, but I couldn't accept it because they wanted me to stay on.
Right.
So I stayed on until 2003.
Okay.
So I had a total of, if I combine the two, about 9.5 years. Yeah.
I see. So, and then you came back, and then
I came back, and I was ambassador at large for the non-aligned movement. We were chair of NAM. Pak La was chair for the non-aligned movement. And then I was about to retire. They sent me to IDFR, the Institute of Diplomacy. My old ministry next to the ambassador, converted to, you know, training institute. So I was there as the head. They called me. At the time, my minister, Tan Sri Said, elevated the post to executive chairman.
Okay.
Normally in government, there's no such post, executive chairman.
Yeah.
Private sector, yes. You know?
Yes.
The post is director general. But he said I was senior ambassador and all that.
So you they gave you a new one.
Yeah, but I was a DG, you know, ran it for about 3.5 years. And then the new minister, Dr. Jenny Farman, asked me to stay on. Then my few months in my, what they call a contract, another additional contract of 1 year, they approached me for Swakam.
Okay.
I was not so
really keen?
sure. I was not so sure because I like to be in IDFR. It was my cup of tea. I know how to run it. I can teach, you know. But then I told myself, I was appointed as the commissioner before. Maybe it's in my karma, in my fate, you know. God had dictated that I should serve in the public service.
Right.
And at the time they approached me as commissioner as well as chair.
Okay.
And commissioner may be a bit easier, but as chair is a bit, you know,
difficult.
very demanding, you know.
Really?
So it took me some time before I decided to go. And of course, there's a pay cut also. Right. In Swakam, I mean in IDFR, I was at super skill A. I got the full pay and all that. There, I had an allowance, half of that.
Right.
But it's not so much as money, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So I went.
Well, my next question
very demanding.
My next question will be: what makes you be interested to be part of association or this organization to
it's
promote?
Not an NGO, you know?
Yeah. To promote human rights.
Well, I think in New York, as an ambassador, I had to deal with human rights.
Okay.
But at a different level.
Okay.
You know, at the what I call very high level of officials, but not, because human rights are discussed in the third committee of the UN, where social issues are discussed, women issues, children, family issues, all are discussed. You know. So I was exposed to it, and then also in the Security Council, where we're a member, sometimes human rights issues are also brought there, although it's related to human rights, the concept peace and security, war zone, the right of children, women, and so on, you know. And I was exposed to it. So it's a general graduation into, you know, this kind of issue. So when I came back, I accepted it, but I see a great difference between dealing with human rights at the international level, and dealing with human rights on the ground
locally. Right.
There is often a disconnect between what we were told when we were diplomat, and as a diplomat, you see what in the talking points that were given by government, and as a commissioner, when I went on the ground, especially in the context of we had a national inquiry for the first time. Normally we have public inquiries on freedom assemblies and so on and so forth, you know. So I had conducted many public inquiries, but it was the first national inquiry, and we opted for a subject which was then not very popular even now, the issue of land rights of the indigenous people. Orang asal, orang asli. In Malaysia, orang di peninsula we call it orang asli.
Yes.
Di sana orang asal, but actually the term now becoming more orang asal. And orang asli kita pun dah bersetuju.
Yes.
That is the word, you know, the original people lah. So I saw things on the ground, and I can see the disconnect. Right. Yeah, between
what is
policy,
being discussed,
statements, and and implementation on the ground.
Right.
There are many reasons for it, you know.
Okay.
So we took 1.5 years to conduct a national inquiry. We came up with a report, and we wanted to present to Parliament. We were not able to because the Parliament was in recess. Election was coming up and all that.
Okay.
And we were about to leave also for the end of my first term. So we presented to the government.
I see.
And the government, under Minister Datuk Palau, decided to set up what they call a task force, a national task force, to look at our report. They took another 1.5 years. So now we are still waiting
For the
implementation stage.
Right.
And because there's a lot of expectations on the part of orang asal, orang asli, but what Suakam could do for them. They thought we could implement.
I see.
But they do realize Suakam doesn't have enforcement power.
I see. Okay, right. We'll discuss in detail on issues pertaining to human rights. But while we talk about human rights, what does it mean? What is basic human rights?
Well, there's a lot of misunderstanding on the part of our people about human rights. When I came to Suakam, I had the impression from my officers that since the establishment of Suakam, there was greater awareness about human rights.
Okay.
By the fact that there were more complaints, you know, that were lodged to Suakam and all that. I had my doubts and my skepticism, you know. And when I talked to friends, relatives and all that, I sense that the knowledge about human rights is very patchy.
Okay.
Yes, and depending on who you speak
to.
Speak to. If you speak to people in the rural area, they have one perspective. You speak to rural, urban people, different perspective, or age factor as well, ethnic group. You know, most people tend to see human rights from in their own perspective.
Okay.
Prism of race and ethnicity and culture.
Right.
So just to prove the point that I was kind of right, 3 months ago, I asked Suakam to conduct a survey using social media, and to their surprise, not to my surprise, various states on human rights. Many thought that Suakam, for instance, is NGO.
Right, which is not.
Even senior civil servants think we're NGO.
Right.
Some ministers think we're NGO, unfortunately.
Okay.
We have a lot of respect for NGO. Do marvelous work. We work closely with them, but we are not. Well, if you technically even non-governmental, maybe we are non-governmental,
right?
But not NGO in the notion that people have.
Okay.
You know, so we are a commission. We are a state agency, independent. Sometimes we become a bridge between the civil society and government. You know.
Right. Right.
So there was a lot of misunderstanding, and some thought. Maybe not surprisingly also, that Suakam is a government agency. And one journalist, your colleague, your counterpart, thought that we were an agency under Ministry of Home Affairs. Can you imagine?
Right. So there's a lot of hazy stuff going on, which is not being explained.
And then talking about human rights per se, there's some, misunderstanding, misperception, that human rights is alien to us, our values. There's a Western agenda being imposed by the West,
Western ideas,
to developing countries for their own reasons, you know. And some people thought it was against Islam.
Yes,
know? Which is not quite true. So I have tough time to explain.
So when you encounter this kind of people, when they ask you, Tan Sri, what is human rights? What is my basic human rights? You know, when you say, oh, this is against religion, and people come out to you with all this kind of a conclusion, how would you explain to these people?
Well, simply put, human rights are rights that we, as human beings, what they call, should enjoy. They're different from what they call that, special status or privileges.
It's not privilege.
It's not privilege, you know. These are basic rights. That's what fundamental means, basic rights. Right to life. Right to accommodation, housing. Right to food.
Education.
Right to have a family. All kinds of rights. As you know, there is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, which we as a member of the UN are bound to respect and uphold. 30 principles. There are so many to go into, but these are the rights. You know, you can name it. You know, they're there. They're rights of individuals. employment, freedom from persecution, right to what they call fair, what they call justice, that kind of thing. You know, so many rights that many people don't quite understand.
Yeah.
And they think there's imposition. And coming to this concept or misperception that it is anathema to Islam, it's not true at all.
Okay.
Because I used to say, when in the golden age of Islam, centuries ago, when the West, most of the West were, I mean, historically verified, were in the dark ages. They use the term dark ages.
Yes.
When, for instance, I mean, it's a sensitive subject, and some Europeans
might not agree.
that they put the women in chastity belt.
Yes.
Yeah. Some are now disputing there's no such thing.
Right.
But if you go to museums, you can find them.
Yeah.
So when their husbands left the wives.
Right.
For years on end, maybe to go to the
work
crusades or
and
whatnot, you know?
war, yeah.
Mostly during crusades.
Yeah.
Or, you know, certain employment that take them a long time, you know? Their nights and so on. So they didn't trust
The wives.
you know, but Muslim leaders in those days, especially Saladin, you know, promoted the concept of rights.
Right.
Of women, children, and all that, you know? And also during his time, I mean, he was well respected by the West because he has an approach about women and children, vulnerable people, during wartime. There was a special rule which he promulgated: you shouldn't touch on the vulnerable people like women and children, the aged.
Right.
They shouldn't be victims of war. So what are we saying?
Right.
This is against Islam.
Islam promotes.
We should be leading it.
Right. I think the other one that I can also mention is also slavery, which Islam is against slavery.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that is also one of the basic human rights.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of
Misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding, you know.
Right.
And then they say it's Western imposition, Western value. No, it's true. It's a fact that the Western countries are very active in it.
Yes.
Why?
Why?
Because historically, they were the greatest perpetrators of violence, of violation of human rights. Second World War, for instance. So, I mean, they went through bloody wars in Europe. So they learned a lot, traumatized, and of course, what they did to the Jews, especially, you know, in Germany and other places, you know. So from there, they sense that they must choose a different path. That's why the UN was created, and the preamble of the United Nations, they talk about human rights there, and plus other parts in the charter itself. And then they had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, which is part of UN principle.
Yeah.
And they came out later on with 9 core conventions of human rights, instruments of rights. We have done only 3 on rights of women, children, and recently, about 3-4 years ago, this one we ratified because we signed it. The other 2 we acceded to it because we were not independent.
I see.
When they were adopted, you know. So we acceded to it. The one that we ratified was the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had 3, with some reservations.
I see.
Because some of the elements, some of people bercanggah dengan principle Islam.
I see.
I mean, it's debatable.
Right.
Some have been dropped, but maybe some are a bit difficult to breach, because if it's the Quran and all that, we can't, you know.
We can't really follow.
We are a Muslim country.
Right.
We take religion very seriously. There are some things that we can't. But sometimes people use, you know, it's again Sharia and all that. But they don't discuss in detail.
Right.
So if you discuss, then that's why we were able to drop some.
Okay.
Yeah, on CEDAW, on women, for instance, you know, and also children.
Okay.
And also disability. We've dropped some, but we still reserve some.
Okay.
And, the international community want us not to have any reservations. So we have 6 more, not done.
Right. Okay. We need to go for a short break, Tan Sri. And when we come back, we'll talk more on human
Thank
rights right here on Hello Malaysia.
Can I have
Stay
my
tuned.
water?
Right, and welcome back to Hello Malaysia with me, Sue, and Tan Sri Hasmi, the chairman of Suhalkam. And of course, we are talking about human rights in conjunction with Human Rights Day. And before we went for a break, we were talking about what human rights is, or what human rights are, basic human rights for every human being. And Tan Sri also explained about how in Western they fight for it. In Malaysia, it was a little bit hazy on the meaning of it, understanding of human rights and things like that, especially when they relate to religion. And of course, that's why we have Suhalkam here to basically, acknowledge or educate people about human rights. And if you don't mind, Tan Sri, would you like to talk about Suhalkam a bit and their mission and vision about human rights?
Well, Suhalkam was established through an act in Parliament, Act 597, it's called. The Human Rights, Commission of Malaysia Act, in short, Suhalkam Act, in 1999, but it was established in 2000.
Okay.
It was set up as an outfit on the premises of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, my old ministry, a small shed behind the main building. And the first chair was to Musa Hitam, then Tan Sri Musa.
Yes.
Imagine living in small quarters there. For a couple of years, it was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then it was transferred to to the Premises Department.
Okay.
But it is an independent commission.
Right.
On paper, it looks like we are like a government agency, because we get funding from then
the government,
Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then the Premises Department. But the government observe the what they call the fact that as a commission, we should independent.
Okay.
We follow the so-called Paris Principles on national rights institutions.
What does that mean?
The Paris Principles adopted some years ago. That set the principles about the principles of the independence of national human rights institution, NHRI.
Okay.
We established ours 1999. Some people much earlier. Some have not done it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now many countries have it.
Adopted.
So we are bound by these principles. So the principle of independence of the NHRI, of the Commission, is very important. So under the Paris Principles, ideally, we should be established not only by an act of Parliament, but also to be what they call, to work closely with Parliament.
Okay.
Like the commissioners should be selected by a committee in Parliament and endorsed by Parliament and presented at least to the Yang Pertuan Agong for royal assent. But in our case, it's not that.
Okay.
The government, the executive, they still have a large say. Before, they identified for but now, of course, we were almost downgraded.
Okay.
Just before I came on board, when Tan Sri Talib was chair, because our secretariat, what they call that, coordinating committee, they call it ICC, not the International Criminal Court, but the Inter-Coordinating Committee of National Rights Institutions, based in Paris, which regulate, coordinate rules and whatnot. They wanted to downgrade us because they felt that our process of selection of the commissioners was not that transparent.
Really?
Yeah, because
okay.
mostly the commissioners are former civil servants.
Okay.
I was a former civil servant.
Right.
But I think now I'm the only former civil servant. Well, there are a few professors, but professors are more independent.
Yeah.
So the act was amended once, not acceptable enough to Geneva, to the ICC Secretariat in Geneva, and it took another year or so. They put us on hold, but I think within 2 or 3 months, my predecessor Tan Sri Talib was able to persuade Parliament to amend it a second time. It was amended a second time. The Secretariat in Geneva still had some reservations.
Okay.
In comparison with others, were not that ideal, an institution. But I think they don't want to embarrass Malaysia and all that. They accepted.
Right.
So I think from then on they were more concerned about performance.
Right.
Of the NHRI Suhalkam.
What will be the consequences of downgrading us?
Well, the consequences of downgrading would be, if we were downgraded, we would have lost our voice. I mean, Suhalkam would have lost our voice internationally.
Okay.
We might be invited to international meetings, but we just watch.
Right.
And
You don't have your say.
No say.
Okay.
No voting right, no say. And we couldn't be a member of this committee or that committee, and doesn't reflect very well on the country.
Okay.
This is why the government decided. I mean, it's not easy to amend and act twice within 3 months.
Right.
So tribute must be given to the government, and of course my predecessor Tan Sri Lanka to be able to push amendments within
3 months.
3 months. You know, I'm trying to push for some more amendments.
Okay.
To act, but I've not been able to
Right.
get it.
But okay, you'll get to it sooner or later. So basically, what will be the mission and the vision of Suharkam?
Well, mission, if I could read here.
Yes, you may.
My memory is still
It's okay.
We have this vision of Suharkam is to create a society in which human rights are fully respected, protected, enjoyed by all.
Okay.
Yeah? So that is the vision. And the mission is to strive as a national human rights institution in to promote, protect, and fulfill human rights for all in Malaysia on the basis of equality and non-discrimination through 1, action, education, and engagement and empowerment of society. And secondly, the promotion of the understanding of human rights, which I said just now was one thing, catchy. And third, integration of human rights into all aspects of life. So these are our mission. So these are vision and mission
of the Suharkam. Right. So far, since Suharkam has been on board, what kind of achievement have, as yourself, as the chairman, what kind of achievement have you achieved so far, especially towards giving explanation, making the rakyat understands about their own human rights or their own rights?
Well, to be quite candid, to be candid sometimes.
Right.
In terms of achievements, very difficult to see the achievements because it's still work in progress.
Okay.
One achievement I would like to see, and I think my predecessors also from the days of Tun Musa and Tan Sri Lanka, we want to see accession to the conventions.
Okay.
Which is only 3 with reservations.
Right.
We've been working very hard to have the government, the nation move forward to accede to the remaining conventions. There are 6 more relating to torture, relating to political, economic rights, social rights, so many things, but we've not been able to. The authorities take a long time to study. When I was a diplomat, usually the talking points given by the government, you said, people ask, why isn't Malaysia acceding to the conventions when someone has done more than you?
Okay.
Because Malaysia is well respected internationally in other areas, development, social development, economic development, all that. But when it comes to human rights, we are...
Was it crawling?
Yeah, crawling, the laggards among the 12 or so countries.
Right.
They have exceeded 2 or ratified only 3 or less.
Okay.
Others have done, in the region, for instance, our neighbors, some have done 8, 9. Even former communist states like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia have done more than us.
Right.
We are way behind. Now, the position of the government then, which I, as a diplomat, had to explain to my colleagues, that before we do that, we want to put our house in order. So we want to make sure that once we exceed, we'll be able to implement.
Okay.
Because some countries just exceed.
But they do not implement.
Very slow, So people admire us. Malaysia takes
their own time to study.
Study. But now, many years ago.
Right. So now they're questioning.
Yes.
Right.
Some of these conventions are more than 30, 40 years.
Okay.
So surely there's a time when the study should be over.
Right.
So now, a bit difficult now. They're more candid to me when I talk internationally, because some of my counterparts are former diplomats. And they said, well, you're not moving.
It's about time, You're
not moving, about time, So now I think if I was still a diplomat, I would find it very difficult to explain.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes when I push as chairman of Suharkam, because I can see both perspectives, Before, yes, I can understand that. And people admired us.
Right.
But now, why the delay? Surely you didn't take 30 years to study?
Right, I'm guessing they blame the government for delaying
So
this.
they say there's no political will.
Okay.
And I saw things together. I know it's a big problem. the government had to get the people to move with them, you know.
Okay.
And this is where the bureaucracy should also play a part. And so now, I mean, being candid, sometimes I sense that as a former diplomat, there is the bureaucratic inertia.
Okay.
The civil service, civil servants, policymakers should help the government, you know. No, human rights is not the prerogative, the province of any one agency.
Okay.
SWACAM is not has absolute monopoly over human rights. All of us, not just the government, which is actually, strictly speaking, the main protector of property human rights, but we were created to help the government to push the process forward.
Right.
But everyone, you and I, civil society, media, all should play a role.
Okay.
Human rights belongs to all, as I said just now, you know. But media sometimes not interested.
Right. Or they're playing the negative part?
Yes.
Okay.
Or self-censorship. Or they want to sensationalize.
Okay.
Yeah, the juicy ones, for instance, you know.
Right.
But there's one, like, I have to say here, when people talk about human rights, they think it's LGBT.
Yes.
It's LGBT.
Right.
Full stop. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
But in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there is no mention of LGBT.
Okay.
LGBT is a part and parcel of individual rights, individual freedom, and so on and so forth, you know.
Right, but I guess that's why they said, you know, it's also my right, because it's
Yes,
individual
yes.
rights.
But unfortunately, somehow the word, you know, this thing has been unnecessary. Well, of course, they're all promoting their rights, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes taken almost as an exclusive thing, you know.
Right.
So much so that there is a misperception by a lot of people that all that SWACAM is struggling for, and those people in the countries in the West are doing, is just promoting individual rights.
Right.
That includes LGBT rights.
Now, by saying that, my question would be, now who would decide for all of us? You know, because you mentioned that everyone has their own rights,
Right.
have their own needs to be the rights to be a human, or the
Right.
things that they need to be.
Yes.
But so who would decide at the end that this should be your human right and this should not be? There should be a boundary. There should be a boundary here and there. So who? That will be the next question. Who would decide on what can or cannot be your human rights? What would your answer to that kind of question?
Well, as I said, everybody has a role to play. Now, I think first thing is we need, all of us need to understand what these rights are. Don't just disparage it by saying that it's not our values. Let's examine it. That's why we have conducted seminars, roundtable discussions, all kinds of things, you know, training, you know, that where we discuss things, you know, rather in depth, and try to and sometimes there's greater enlightenment that we bring to the subject, but some unfortunately are very prejudiced.
Yes.
They don't want to talk about it. So we're now trying to engage with all segments, including recently with the Sharia court, Mahkamah, Jakim, and even the minister responsible for religion, for instance. You know, for a long time it's a taboo subject. You know, but maybe I should mention here, some Muslim countries in West Asia have endorsed or ratified or acceded to the convention I mentioned about without reservations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have no problem. And so I think we have to emulate them, to study how are they able
to accept
to
without
accept,
prejudice,
and yet without compromising our religious beliefs.
right?
So there's now we're engaging more and more. People are, for instance, we are trying to explore the possibility with the Sharia court
Okay.
to do what we do in civil court, to have keep a watching brief in cases in court, a few cases on which SWACAM's views could be presented through a lawyer on certain issues pertaining to human rights,
Okay.
mostly relating to children's rights,
Okay.
you know, relating to other religious rights and all that kind. In civil court, it is accepted, although it is not in the act as such, but the judge is pretty open to like children issue, tussle between husband and wife,
Right.
or divorce,
Right.
parents, because we accede to the Convention on the Right of the Child, should have rights, and the final bottom line is the interest of the child, which is paramount.
Right.
So we go there not to take side, but just to convey the principal position on the concept of right of the child, for instance, you know.
Okay.
So now we're engaging with Sharia court, and some are more open, but it's very new. So we hope that this will also open the door.
Right. Okay. We need to go for another short break, Tan Sri.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll talk more on human rights right here on Hello Malaysia. Stay tuned.
Jangan cakap pasal ni suara-suara saya tak nak dengar.
Sukan Bernama kembali setiap Khamis 9.30 malam. Bernama TV.
Kerjasama dua negara serumpun, Malaysia dan Indonesia. Hiburan, paparan budaya dan gaya hidup menerusi Salam dari Kuala Lumpur. Setiap Isnin, 8.30 malam, hanya di Bernama TV.
Menyelami realiti, menjejaki masa, meninjau peristiwa, paparan kronikal kembara kehidupan, pelbagai keunikan juga pengalaman menarik. Segalanya disorotkan selama setengah jam dalam channel Bernama setiap Ahad jam 9.30 malam hanya di Bernama TV.
And welcome back to Hello Malaysia with me, Sue, and Tan Sri Hasmi. We are talking about human rights, and before we went for a break, we were talking a little bit detail on Malaysian on believing human rights and things like, are we given the human rights as Malaysians? And some people may think, you know, Malaysians are not really open on human rights. Some would say the policies are not really open. You know, there are more things that we could do, especially by Suhakam and things like that. What do you say about this? Yeah, some people would say, even the international community you mentioned earlier, that they were saying Malaysia was not, you know, together on human rights. But what can we do together, Suhakam and also the Rakyat, that we could actually boost ourselves and telling the world community that we are on par with human rights, despite whether we are a Muslim country or not? What can you say?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer actually, but I'll try. Who is responsible?
Yeah.
To move the of course, I mean, at the end of the day, I would say the government is responsible.
Okay.
Because we're a member of the UN, you know, member of the UN.
Right.
And one of the things that we've had to agree to be member of the UN is to accept UN principles, including the Universal Declaration of Rights. So they are not mandatory, not legally binding, but as a member of the UN, they're well respected internationally because the things I mentioned 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, we have served the Security Council 4 times. We have been in the Human Rights Commission before, at least twice to 3 times. You know, long time ago, and we were until recently, and they changed the Human Rights Commission to Human Rights Council, Human Rights Council, you know, in Geneva. We have just left last year, and we hope to gain it in 2017. So we are being judged by higher standards.
Right.
As a responsible member of the UN, we can't run away from it.
Okay.
We are duty bound, and many countries have acceded to it. You know, we are, as I said, among the 12 or so laggards, and there's no reason why we should be a laggard. We should take the lead. Right. And some countries, I mean, some of our people.
Can you name which country or how many countries are under scrutinizing eyes of the UN that you know, we are not following the human
there is a
rights?
Commission.
Okay.
The commission I was talking about, which we are a member in Geneva, a council, human rights council, where human rights issues are discussed.
Okay.
And as a member of that council until recently, we are duty bound to support the process, you know.
Okay.
And I think it'd be a bit difficult if you a member and you're not moving forward.
Right.
So should we go in again in 2017? And I think people will look at our record. And I think there is now, I should also mention to the audience, the UPR, Universal Periodic Review. There's a review period in Geneva, you know. We've been reviewed twice. And during is a peer review by this intergovernmental setup. Our friends, members of the UN, PBB, made recommendations to Malaysia to do this, with that. And we accepted, you know,
the suggestions?
recommendations. You know?
Okay.
And people will be evaluating us the next time around, when it comes around for review.
Right.
So we be watched, be evaluated. So as a responsible member of the United Nations, you know, an active member, now sitting in the Security Council, I think it is incumbent upon us to move the process forward.
Okay.
So I think at the end of the day, the government will have to lead the process, but the government needs help by agencies, help by civil society, help by all communities, you know. So NGOs are doing their work to push.
Okay.
SOACAM is doing its job, but there are limitations. SOACAM is not enforcing powers. So what we do, we engage with people, to teach people, to educate people, create awareness.
Right.
We have many workshops, but I think we're now engaging more and more with parliamentarians,
right,
policymakers, because they can play a very big part. But it takes time. And then, of course, you know, Chairman of ASEAN, about to give up, I think, very soon, you know, to Laos. And when we were Chairman of ASEAN, I think our slogan was to have a people-oriented ASEAN.
Yes.
And ASEAN will be a community come 2016. Now, once you ask ourselves, what is a community? Now, a community that comes to mind immediately is the European community, EU. No? Of course, the EU is very advanced. But Africa has a community, AU, the African community. Now, Africa, in terms of human rights, they're very much cohesive. They talk about human rights.
Okay.
They have a humans and people's right court.
Okay.
So the Africans put not just human rights, but community rights as well. Because, you know, Africa, like us, also in Asia, we also have societal rights, community rights. You know? So they put in there. There's no problem, you know, because otherwise, human rights be perceived as strictly individual rights.
Right.
Yeah, and there are also societal rights, community rights. You know, there's no harm. The Europeans are ahead of us. They discuss human rights issues. They have human rights commissions in many African countries. Their reports to Parliament are debated in Parliament, unlike us. So they're moving ahead. So in Asia, there is no Asian community in Africa or Europe, but we have ASEAN. So we have ASEAN, you know.
But we'll start from the small one.
Yes,
The ASEAN will be easier.
Yeah, and ASEAN and Human Rights Declaration.
Right.
And they have now Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. They call it AICHA, of which we are a member. So all these instruments can be used. So by next year, when we become a community, people will judge ASEAN and Malaysia as a member of ASEAN at a higher standard. And by 2020, should we make it to be a developed country? Nation, will we judged by the standards of a developed nation?
Yes.
Now, my point, I've been asking people, what kind of developed nation would we be?
Right.
If by 2020, we still have 6
unsigned,
unsigned or unacceded to conventions.
Okay.
So we do hope that, you know, we're pushing the government that at least by 2016, kalau tak semua pun, a few, 2 or 3 or 4, you know, ideally by 2016.
But that's a lot for 1 year to do.
No.
But in your opinion, what should we focus on? Because we've looked into women already, children, and the disabled. What should we look forward after this?
Well, ideally from perspective of SOACAM, especially the chairman is going to finish his term soon.
Yeah.
If it's possible, all. But I know it's difficult.
Yeah.
But so we will have to prioritize.
Right.
Then from my perspective, I think one of the first should be the Convention Against Torture.
Torture?
Yeah, CAT in short.
Right.
Because when I engage with people, you know, with authorities, police, for instance, the prison department, all that, Home Affairs ministries, if you don't accede to the Convention Against Torture, CAT, in short, people have the impression that we either conduct
Right. We agree with it, yes.
or we condone it.
Okay.
I mean, how do you answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet I engaged with the authorities. Said, no, we don't do this and all that, you know. But I think, to me, that is important.
We should walk the walk.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this torture, against torture, this is not just torture like in prison.
Yeah.
But it's against torture and other inhuman and degrading forms of treatment.
Okay. Okay.
Now, that includes caning, unfortunately.
I see. Right.
Now,
So that's
caning,
another issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our society allows caning.
Yes.
Traditionally and all that, you know. Although in schools now they're trying to
Reduce
it and give it only to principals and whatnot, you know. But caning is still allowed, you know. But even in Islam, I think while caning is provided for, I'm not an expert, it is not to punish.
Right. It's to teach.
It is not to torture. It to say it's a slap on the wrist kind of thing, you know. And parents, you know, who know about how to. But of course, some people, some parents
would disagree.
Temper will not in it.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's a quite complicated issue.
Okay.
If it's just torture, as we know it, I think it's much easier.
Right.
But it includes inhuman, degrading forms of itu, macam-macam lah.
Right.
And so that's why we engage.
Can we do the same thing like we did with women and children, where you say
Yes.
certain excerpts that we could not agree to?
Yes, we can have reservations.
Right.
And all these remaining 6 conventions allow for reservations. Now, when I engage with interlocutors, those who are kind of have reservations about this, they always said, you know, we shouldn't exceed. Even reservations is not good enough, because I said, why don't you have reservations like we build walls or fences? And some of my friends from the other side said, hey, Tan Sri, walls can be breached, fences can be broken, and there's a lot of pressure internationally to, like the 3 conventions that we signed up, we ratified, pressure to drop all. But I said the international community will always press for removal all. But we have to stand on things that we cannot, those we can remove after deliberations, which is not fundamental of belief, maybe can, maybe more cultural kind of thing. But those that are really part of a religion, for instance, in the Quran, for instance, in the Hadith, then you have to explain.
Right.
They can't, you know. For instance, I had an example I would like to give. Former ambassador of Austria, when I had engagement with the EU ambassadors, asked me, a lady, she has left now, I said, the chairman, why does Malaysia drop some reservation, not all, like CEDAW?
Right.
And I explained the position of women in Islam. You know, Islam respect women. In fact, there's a saying with the Prophet that the way to heaven is under the feet of your mother.
Right.
I mean, there's how high women up, you know.
Yeah.
So I explained, like for instance, leading prayers and so on. Of course, this being disputed some people, you know.
Yeah.
But she said, well, Austria is a Christian country, Catholic country.
Yeah.
And under Christendom, under Catholicism, women are barred from holding certain important positions. Forget about being Pope. Even, you know, bishop, you know, low positions they can't, you know. Then I asked her, how do you respond to this kind of criticism? He said, well, this a matter, it's a matter of faith.
Okay.
So they put a stop. So I can say it's a matter of faith.
Right.
We can't. So I'm trying to encourage our society to move, you know, to what they call accede to the conventions with
with religion. Yeah.
And over time we may be able to drop some. If not, we build these fences.
Right.
So when they said, oh, fences can be breached, the wall can be broken and all that, or the other way around, I said, well, it depends on what walls you have. Like the Great Wall of China is a huge wall.
Yeah.
Lasting thousands of years.
Yes.
Fencing can be electric fencing. There are certain red lines which we can cross, and I think people will understand, because internationally we'll be under pressure.
Yes.
To drop, but this is, you know, because ideally they do not want any reservations.
Right.
But it is allowed for.
Right.
In the conventions, because otherwise, what do? We have very few options. One is we get out of the UN. I mean, is that an option? Getting out of the UN?
Right.
I don't think so. The second option is, since some of the conventions were adopted when we were not independent, but there were some Muslim countries who were in the UN. They had reservations, whatnot, their heart was not in it, but they didn't have the vote, and the thing was carried, and they went along. In other words, they expressed reservations, they abstain. I mean, the UN system, abstention doesn't count. If they have the votes, a resolution is adopted. So one option is, if you feel that you were pushed, before, being badgered and all that, maybe the Islamic countries under the context in the OIC revisit the subject. But I've discussed to a lot of colleagues, it's not likely.
I see.
For us to amend the UDHR and all that, so what choice have we got? Because it's not international norm, and it's not against Islam as such, There's some exception. So the third option is, we become savvy, we accede and go along with the rest,
right,
with reservations. This is the only way, and because otherwise there's no other option. The last option would be, I like to quote a Malay proverb, we crawl back under our tempurung.
Yes.
I mean, this is no option too,
Yeah.
That's why you have that proverb, you have to join with
the progress.
community.
Okay.
So we have very few choices.
Okay.
And the challenge is there, yeah.
Okay, right. We are almost to the end of the program.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell our rakyat, especially on human rights, and what would you like to remind them about human rights, Tan Sri?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. As I said just now, human rights is not within the purview of just one organization, whether it's a government, or parliament, or Sawakam, or civil society, or NGOs. It belongs to all of us. All of us have to play a role, but I think we need to have an open mind, to engage with different people, from different perspectives. It's only through engagement, I think, we'll be able to understand the perspectives of different people. Because otherwise, we see things from a narrow prism.
Okay.
And I think for a country like Malaysia,
multicultural,
multi-religious, homogeneous, heterogeneous, and all that, we have no choice. It's going to be like that, there are some privileges and positions, that have been in the constitution and all that. This is well understood, but at the same time, this should not be used to, not to move the other person
advantage.
Forward. Yes.
Someone's advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. We are all Malaysians. At the end of the day, we are one nation, so we have to respect each other's. So Sawakam has been trying to actually to inculcate the understanding of right from primary school.
Okay.
I think we have to change mindsets. And I think some mindsets are very difficult to change.
Yes.
We give training, courses and whatnot. Sometimes it goes to the other way.
Right.
But if you inculcate from young, understanding differences, respecting differences in different cultures, different values, different religions and all that. So when our children grow up and take position in society, whether it's policemen, prison department official, or civil servants, they want to understand it. So even a policeman, for instance, when they said, tangkap, yes tuan, tapi dia ada hak.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's where I think it should begin. But 15 years, Sawakam has been around.
Right.
But the problem is, I think we need the
more understanding from the people.
By everyone. We are not against anyone. We're all for one. We're not fighting for rights of
certain races.
Agenda of certain people.
Right.
It's our agenda.
Okay.
This is my appeal to all Malaysians as we are going into this area of what I call an ASEAN community and a developed nation by 2020, inshallah. So we will be judged by higher standards.
Okay.
So I think it is not a very comforting thought to be kept at the bottom, laggard of 12 of those countries. They've exceeded only to three
for now. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Tan Sri, for being with us and talking about human rights. And thank you so much for tuning in to Hello Malaysia. Until we meet again real soon, I'm Surati Sanusi. Bye.